Recording. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Not leaving you hanging.
Thank you. And John Thompson has joined us as well. So without any further ado, at I was going to say 3:04 Eastern, 12:04 Pacific, we'll get started. So today I'm going to talk with all of you about getting started with public speaking. We'll start comprehending your apprehensions, acknowledge your fears, begin by introspectively examining the specific anxieties associated with public speaking. I wanted to do this. I don't normally do acting for my meetings, but this is Greg why I wanted to have a video. How many of us have sat through talks like that? And that is really what we are trying to avoid. I think any of us, this is sort of an extreme example, but think about everything that just went wrong with a talk like that, and how many talks have all of us been in where we have been part of, or we're forced to really sort of participate in, try to sit through a talk like that. So we can do better, and that's really what we're going to focus on. So let's take a quick survey about my very brief intro. If you could point your camera towards that QR code. Got a very quick survey for everybody. Just point your little camera up that. You should get a link to Menti. And you should see something like that. If you could choose from any of those options. All right. Let's go ahead and while we're doing that, let's see what we got. So let's see what we got. What sins did I commit in less than 60 seconds with that first slide and all of the anti-patterns? Let's see what the results look like.
All of the above.
Maybe more. Exactly. It was almost joyful, gleeful, very briefly, to be that persona that tried to put as many bad anti-patterns, as many bad habits as I could in a single slide. So let's look through this. And we'll talk through all of these through the rest of today's conversation. And sort of how to avoid all of this. But these are some of the things that we want to avoid when we're public speaking. And these are some of the things that I think all of us have seen. I tried to really, again, compress all of that into one single awful slide. But of the things that we really don't want to do as public speakers, and things that are too easy to do, especially when you get started, reading slide content exactly as it is on the slide, poor body language, no eye contact, no interactivity or audience engagement, too much content on the slide, tone of voice, speech. I chose the most unprofessional font and styling I could in a text-only slide. There were some worse fonts, but that was up there, but still legible. And again, all of the above, maybe more. I'd be curious if whoever spoke to the other, go ahead. I see your hand waving on my other screen. Yes, sir.
Yeah. How many people had a sinking feeling in your gut as soon as John put that slide up and started talking?
Put it in yeah, there we go. Anyone else? Come on.
Come on. There we go. Everybody, right?
Renell.
I know John, and when he started that, I had the
what are you doing?
Good. I got to tell you all, I practiced that multiple days, and we'll talk about we'll talk about how much effort it can be to do stuff that looks effortless. That's actually part of the serious fun, serious joking kind of thing. So thanks. These were the results that we had. So really, there's no right answer other than my intent was I violated basically a whole bunch of implicit and explicit rules, really about respecting your time and making it something that's worthy of your time. And that's really what's important. Oh, I'm sorry. I will send you the video. It was awful, but it was awful by design. But I will definitely share it with you after the fact. And hope that you appreciate it. So we've got the survey says can't help with the family feud. So today, very quickly, we're going to talk through some slides. I'm going to give you the agenda, and you may not even know exactly what these things are, and that's by design. What I'm trying to do, and I'm going to over narrate a little bit, I like to use the agenda to be a priming function. Not so that people are thinking in advance in detail everything that we're going to cover, but when I put an agenda together, by the way, I want it to be a priming function so that you can start thinking about what I will be talking about. It's a good priming function for the way that we think and what we're expecting. So I like to have an agenda in every one of my conversations. The first is you've got this, and I'll explain what that is. Hopefully that's piqued your interest. That's the intent behind adding that title of that particular slide. Start with why. Many of you know I love to steal from Simon Sinek, and that's one that I encourage everyone to use as you start getting involved in public speaking. It costs a lot to look this cheap. That one hopefully has got some people kind of quizzical, and some of you may know. Does anyone, I'll just put myself, I'll ask you quickly, does anyone know where that quote came from? It's one of my favorite quotes from an amazing woman.
Phyllis Diller.
No, but someone even more awesome than that, which is a high bar. So we'll get to that point, but you're generationally, I think you're pretty close at least. Avoiding death by PowerPoint. We have all seen this. We probably have a lot of PowerPoint in our lives. We'll talk about avoiding death by PowerPoint. Engage. Don't be boring. Everybody is speaking. Closing strong, and suggested next steps. When I was running through this over the last couple of days, I realized this basically sounds like Alex Trebek talking about the different categories of the next Celebrity Jeopardy or something. So Joan Rivers, we'll keep going. You guys are getting close. You at least have the hair color right, but we'll go from there. But anyway, this is what we're going to talk about today. It's about 11 after. We'll have enough time for some Q&A. I'll try to engage with all of you as I recommend everybody here. Feel free to stop me as we go through if you have questions and thoughts, and some things we may parking lot later. Lucille Ball, I'm going to just keep looking in the chat. You guys are having a lot of fun with this, but you'll know soon all will be revealed. So I spend a lot of time speaking publicly. This is probably one of the most important talks that I've given, and I really very much appreciate all of you joining. Some things I do for fun, some things I do for work, and some things I do because I really feel morally and ethically sort of nudged to give back a little bit when I've been given so much. And so when I think about this, and when I got started as an introvert, sort of being nudged into public speaking, this was the message that was not in this language, but this was what was presented to me. And this is my request or my encouragement to all of you who may be on the fence about getting started with public speaking. The world needs more authentic, experienced, passionate, thoughtful speakers. It needs people like each and all of you. We have enough garbage, I would say, AI generated, is making it even worse in terms of content on YouTube and LinkedIn and elsewhere. The antidote to that, to me, is authenticity. What you have done in project and program management, other people will benefit from, especially those getting started, or also those who are changing from a different area of PM work to another, software to infrastructure, software to hardware, whatever the case may be, construction to technology, whatever those might be. Your experiences, having been further along that journey, are invaluable to people. They're things that they're not going to find in a book. People want to hear from people just like you, people who've been there and done that. I didn't understand this until probably a decade after I had been talking, that the benefits weren't that I knew something better than what I could find in a book or online or in a class. It was all about making these things real. And I don't want to read a case study in most cases. I want to talk to somebody who's done it. I want to have a dialogue with someone like you. That's what's really valuable. That's what's missing. That's what the world needs. And it's beneficial to you as much as it is for those folks. who would be listening to your talk with gratitude and appreciation, learning your perspective and experience and passion and background. I will just start with this and I'll end with it as well. Start before you feel ready. I've been doing this for many decades, and I do it professionally now dozens of times a year. And every single time, I'm a little bit nervous. This one in particular, because the bar is really high. I want everyone who's here to leave this session at least feeling like you can and want to do this. So that's a high bar. If I wasn't nervous about that, to me, that would mean that I don't really care enough about it. So you've got this, you can do this, and people will benefit and appreciate from your knowledge and experience. So I really want to start there. People are hungry for your wisdom and experience and passion and knowledge and perspective and your personality. Let's get you on that stage. Let's start with why, again, stealing from Simon Sinek, which I always enjoy doing. But when you're passionate about things, it feels great public speaking. Now, whether or not my talk today is great, I'm passionate about it, and I'm doing my best to impart the things that I think will be useful to all of you to start this journey. I'm passionate about this topic because I've seen how it has benefited me and how many other people and the people who are receiving and participating in those events. That's really important. So what is your why? Why do you care about a particular topic? I used to, when I would submit for conferences or when I was asked to speak and they invited me to choose what topic I wanted, I used to start with the things that I knew were popular. And then I moved on to things that I thought were unique, things that I cared about, that I was passionate about, things like this. Nobody really, well, a couple of people may have asked me to do this along the way indirectly, but I care about this because I know the benefits that it provides to both the speakers and to the audiences. It benefits everybody. That's why I care about this. But that's my why for today's conversation. And anything that you're going to think about talking about in your talk, your public speaking entrance or your next one, if you've done them before, it should always be about something that you care about and that you've got your own unique perspective or experience. I also, when I was first getting started, spent a lot of time creating content that was available elsewhere. And it was less at that time when I got started about what my observations have been, my learnings, things that I would impart to others that I was mentoring or that I was having joined my team. I had my own unique angle, and that's really now my area of focus is what can I bring that's unique to this that folks wouldn't have heard elsewhere. That's also what all of you have. Nobody has your background. Nobody has your experience. Nobody has your personality. So you have something that is absolutely unique and worthy. Always also, when we're thinking about things that we're going to talk about, who's the audience, but what do we want them to have learned when they're done? What I try to think about for not just these sessions, but really more broadly now with meeting management, because we all have so many of them, is I specifically say, at the end of this hour, everyone will leave this session. What will have been a success if we ensured this particular thing happened? So is it learning? Is it knowledge? I can't follow everything in the chat. I hope it's going great. But what do we want folks to understand? What do we want them to have benefited from? Because they've invested an hour or a number of hours, whatever that duration is. They have invested that time. Make it an investment. They should have learned something. They should be inspired to do something. But there should be some difference in where they started before you started talking and when you ended. There you go. In the chat, you were close, sort of.
Failed.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, Jake got it.
This was my favorite quote from Dolly Parton, and I think there's an analog. Heard an interview with her decades ago. She said, it costs a lot of money to look this cheap. And I love that quote because, especially for those of you who've been in sessions with me before, and there's a number of folks from the board who are here, I think a lot of time when I speak, it may look like I am just doing this stream of consciousness with no preparation. This presentation, which is now 16 slides, was 25 slides 2 days ago. I have spent probably 20 to 30 hours on this presentation alone. And you might never know that, and that's okay. My goal is to not make it look effortful. I actually want to make it look simple and easy and intuitive. But to do that, there has to be a lot of practice. So even if you're an expert, and even if you've spoken before, there's a lot of preparation that is required to go into these trainings. And I will tell you, the more and more that I do this at an executive level professionally, I spend more time, more effort, more refinement, more editing, more practicing than I've ever done before. So that's going to go up, not down, but it's worth it. We want to have the sense that it's effortless. But that's if it actually is effortless and you haven't put in the advanced work, things will not work. I went through this session a number of times and made a bunch of edits as recently as last night, around 7 o'clock, based on feedback that I got from my wife and some other fellow professional speakers that I've worked with before, that I asked them to give a critical eye to this presentation. And they gave me some great feedback. I cut a bunch of slides because there was just too much content here. Especially as you're getting started, have friends, family, or friendly coworkers be an audience. It's really helpful to have people who can be willing and able to provide you that feedback. The one caveat that I'd say is sometimes there are people who don't want to say, oh, hey, you should have, you could have. You want folks who will be honest with you to give you real feedback. That's really important before you get in front of an audience, especially if you haven't done public speaking before, if it's been a while, or if you're not yet comfortable with it. So a lot of effort to make it look effortless. Always want those honest questions and feedback. And when you get it, consider it thoughtfully. And in most cases, like I said, in mine, make adaptations. Your audience is going to tell you what made sense or didn't make sense a lot more than what you think makes sense or didn't make sense, right? Again, all of us have customers, all of us have an audience. We need to be thinking about what they want, what they need, what's clear and important to them, not whether or not it's clear to us. Anyone seen a diagram like this recently? No? This all makes sense to everybody? All right. Some of my friends are going to have to go on video. Yeah, Renell, exactly, right? We've seen some of these. Good afternoon. We got some new folks joining. If I have anybody who can go on video, this will be fun to see body language. But avoiding death by PowerPoint. Now, I was acquainted with the term death by PowerPoint. Thank you, Mr. Fine. Thank you, Fred. I didn't mean for you guys to actually do body language of dying. That we need to keep you around for the board. That's important. Although if they do pass on, if any of you are interested in joining to join our board, we will have some openings soon if these guys keep it up. But avoiding death by PowerPoint, there's a great, although old video on YouTube. So if you are curious more about this, this is where I got the term and where I learned some things that I have been violating rules for quite some time. And here's the basic idea. If your audience can get an emailed copy of your PowerPoint and they can understand everything that you wanted them to understand by reading it, I'm not sure whether I should say I'm sorry or you're welcome, but either way, you've got a document, not a presentation at that point. That is not what we want when we talk. We want to keep slides simple. We want them to be, at least I like them to be, highly visual and to use metaphors. Again, the use of metaphors and visuals, we're visual thinkers in most cases anyway, but the idea of metaphors, if you're talking about topics that people don't have familiarity with, the more that you can connect it, metaphors work because they connect something that folks don't yet know to something that they do. That's the whole point of metaphors and analogies, similes, etc. So use those to help connect it, especially if you're talking about topics that your audience is not well acquainted with yet. I'm going to violate this rule only on this bullet point. Don't read directly from slides. How many people will read slides verbatim? That's what I was doing with the my earlier thing, and I'm sorry, some of you missed this, but I had a very dramatic intro where I had a slide printed and I read the entirety of this 400-word tome. We don't want people reading slides. Slides should be a jumping off point. They can be really just a sentence fragment in most cases that will allow us to use that to then talk some more. But what you say should be complementary to the point in your slide. It should not just be reading that slide. Here's the avoiding those overly complex diagrams. I have no idea. I've seen diagrams, not this one. This was stolen from the internet. I just did a Google search for give me something along the lines of a really overly complex diagram and copied and pasted that. But I've seen ones like this in PowerPoints before. I have no idea who the audience is for that and how they would ever find it. It feels like Where's Waldo, but less fun. We also want to avoid those walls of text. Like for those of you who were here at the beginning, you saw that first slide as an anti-pattern. We want to avoid that as well. And then this is one of those things that, like cilantro, people either love or hate, but consider animation to be a way. You can see that I use animation so you can only see one bullet point at a time. This is one of the techniques if you want to avoid death by PowerPoint specifically, and you have more than one bullet point per slide. For those of you who don't know the psychology behind it, if you put a whole bunch of text on a slide, people like me, especially with ADHD, I can't help myself. I will read the entirety of your slide while you were talking about your first point. And that's one of the reasons that we don't want to put all of that content on one slide at one point. You will have lost those people immediately because it's not intentional. It's not conscious in most cases. People just will read whatever's on screen. So use animation like I did here with removing the formatting on it or changing it to white or gray depending on the background. That's an easy way on that slide to have one bullet point at a time. So I know what I'm talking about at that point. You know what I'm talking about at that point. And that is all that we're focusing on at that point. Engage. So this is a picture from a meetup that we had in Spokane, Washington. I don't remember the exact event. It might have been for quality assurance. It might have been an Agile meetup. I honestly don't remember. But even if you're not in person, this is still a really good analog. We've got a live audience here. I always encourage, I'm going to say thank you to Justin, by the way, for going on video. I will thank anybody. Thank you all for showing up, but especially if you can get people, thank you, David. If you can get people on video, we've got a live audience, even if it's remote. Thank you, Renell. You all are awesome. Thank you. We've got a live audience. So let's treat everybody like a live audience. We want to ask questions and encourage participation. We're remote. So you saw that I did that Mentimeter poll. Mentimeter is a great, and there's a free version of it available that you can use. Use polls. Zoom has polls built in. You can use whatever tool you'd like. You can use whiteboards. You can just have people throw stuff in chat, but make it interactive. And then the part that I think is most valuable for me, and this can be a little bit uncomfortable at first, but you'll get there if you're not there yet. I promise you. Whatever we talk about, we want to have people engaged because it's a higher quality conversation at that point. It actually makes it a conversation at that point. But also, when we talk about context, we talk about questions, we talk about observations. It then becomes this collective effort that we all have, like all of us here, to learn from one another, not just from me. Like I know some stuff, but I've got a lot of history, good and bad and interesting. But so do you, all of you. So how do we engage? So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm going to pause. You can do it formally or informally, doesn't matter. But have any of you, of what I've talked about so far, have you got experiences that are in counter to anything that I've said, that support what I've said, different thoughts on that? Maybe we start with this slide in particular. What ways have you found in your own context when you speak, for those of you who've done some speaking in any sort of forum? Fred, go ahead, please. You're on mute, though.
Well, yeah, you want me on mute because I'll just keep chatterboxing.
You and me both, buddy, but keep going.
No, the place where this hit me, that being in person and getting feedback from people was a great thing, was a long time ago. I sat with PMI San Francisco, and we had a sort of an event where everybody would sit around the table, and you get 5 or 6 people at a table, and just go around the table and say, here's what I do, and here's what's happening to me, and that sort of thing. And as soon as I started talking about how I do construction and what I do in the room full of IT people, they wouldn't let go. It's like, oh wow, so tell me how that is. How do you do project management in the context of construction? And at the time, and this is 20 years ago probably, at the time it was so different, and it really sort of pulled me out from being somebody who didn't really want to speak. It's like, I don't know what I have to give to these people, to going, oh, wait a minute, I am a unique person and I have a unique point of view. And in some cases, it's something that people really don't know. And as I have presented a little bit more and more over the years, I found that it's exactly what John said, that we each have a unique vision, a unique point of view, a unique set of things to deliver to people, and that everybody would like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Could not agree more. And that's, I mean, it's great for everybody involved. It's great to share our story. Others appreciate learning from it. I know, Fred, you and I, when we first met, we had a good conversation about our backgrounds and the things that were different and things that were in common. How about others? Have you found other things that have been surprising or effective or complementary to, or even in conflict with anything that I've said? Greg, please.
Yeah, I was actually just, especially as Fred was talking, thinking about how, largely, not just this, but meetings in your work with your coworkers, right? Like, I go up and give a weekly presentation to my team, giving numbers and blah, blah, blah. And it's the most boring meeting ever. Everyone's just waiting to go. But as soon as I started getting them to give me the information, or give me status on what they're doing, and it becomes much more of a back and forth, or if there's a concern, right? Like I think 2 weeks ago actually had just an argument, constructively in the meeting, but it just made it so much more, people feeling like they're heard and driving so many much more results. And it's fun to go to the meeting because you actually get stuff figured out.
Yeah. For those of you, I'll put folks on the spot, but in a general way. For those of you who've done any sort of public speaking, and I mean really just like my first times, I was terrified public speaking in front of people that I worked with, but getting up at a podium with a PowerPoint and at the time not a slide projector, I'm not that old, getting close, but the LCD projector. Has anyone found as a speaker where when you engage, that you learn something that as because to me it's bi-directional. Even though we're sharing, we're also learning. See a couple of thumbs up. I don't know if anyone has any stories there to share, but at least we've got some affirmations. And
John,
then yeah, David, hey, good afternoon.
Hi. Anyone who teaches knows this very well, that
Yes,
you stand up in front of a class and you're presenting stuff, but the very act of doing that causes you to discover things that are new.
absolutely.
Which can be scary. So you just have to share that with your students and say, I never thought of it that way before. And
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I thank you for that. I think we also are changing from a model where it was command and control, and there was like this supreme knowledge person, and then everyone else was the beneficiary of this extreme knowledge. And the reality, I think we're all learning, is that everyone has something to share. John, please. You're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, okay. It's funny, you were thinking about public speaking. I kicked off my career, if you want to call it public speaking, from being a casino auditor to jumping into working for IDT as a technical trainer. So 1 minute I'm just staring at a 10 key and looking at numbers, and the next minute I'm actually traveling around the United States training people how to use slot accounting software in person. Large classrooms from up to 30, probably 20 people in a classroom, all the way to working with people one-on-one, and learn a lot about how to become a better trainer, becoming a member of Toastmasters, which I learned quite a bit about public speaking in large groups. So I think that the key, what I learned from that, and I think the same thing you had mentioned, is you don't want to necessarily read from a PowerPoint deck or from a script. You want to have bullet points or notes and then speak more extemporaneously, so it sounds more natural, like you're holding a conversation. So I've taken all that experience, and now as a Six Sigma project manager, granted my teams are not in person, but it's all online, and I try to make that conversation very much one-on-one with everybody in the team. So those are the tips I've learned in my brief history of public speaking.
That's awesome. Well, and I'm looking forward to your the Lean Six Sigma talk. I think we talked about that talk, so I'm excited about that as well. But yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts on this? Any other ideas and or observations? Anything again to share with fellow project leaders? Things that you found effective for engagement?
I completely agree with your premise that passion is important to your presentation, but it's also important not to make it a whole presentation about yourself.
Absolutely.
I've been a victim of that at times. So, but no, I did some volunteer work for an organization called Bixie, and I was forced to chair meetings where I had a number of different presenters that went in there, and I found that was more effective than 4 hours of somebody sitting there listening to me, but bringing in other presenters.
Thank you. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that actually is a good cautionary tale. Like the pendulum, don't let it swing too far to the, it's not a PowerPoint. It's not a talk about me. I am leading the conversation. And yeah, I am now at the point where I'm even leaving out my introductory slide, especially for this group. Everyone's heard me talk before. It's not about me. It's really all about you, all of you. So yeah, the more thank you, Pat, for that. I think that's invaluable, right? That's our goal, and this is our audience, and we really are there to serve our audience. They are our customer in this context. Thank you for that context, Justin. Please.
Yeah, this sort of goes almost contrary to what Pat said. No, it's not about me, but I'm the person on stage, and all eyes end up on me, and so it's important for my personality to come through. I've been in so many. This goes back to sort of John, what you were talking about of like reading the slide.
Right.
Some presentations where somebody's super stiff and they're just monotone, staccatic in their tone and their personality and their emotions, and it's like it's important to let yourself be you and let your personality convey the information and to come through in that stage.
Yeah, thank you. And I am. I don't know about everybody else, but I very much appreciate what you both have said, and I can reconcile that very much, which is it's not about me, but I am the one who is presenting a perspective on this. So it's not about the fact that it's my perspective, but it's about the fact that this is a perspective that I can represent authentically, that it is based on how I see the world. You don't have to agree or disagree, but it's going to be something that is not generic or commoditized. And that's, I think, see, gentlemen, if you both agree with those, but I mean, to me, I think both of those are very valuable, important points and complementary to one another. The content isn't about you. The presentation of the content is. Nicely said, Greg. I think that's good. So thank you all. Fred, go ahead, please.
Just one more small thing, maybe something I learned. I have done some singing over the years, and especially I started out, in the chorus in the back with everybody else. And as time went by, I've done some solos, I've done some work with quartets, things like that, and the edge that comes when I know those are my people out there in the audience. I know those people.
Yeah.
And I am singing to you, right? That's the thing that everybody really appreciates. It's not how good I am. It's not how good the song is. It's about you're giving this to me, and that's the thing.
Yeah, completely agree. And that connection is important. That is the engagement, I think, and that's Yeah, that's a high bar, but I think that's a great analogy or analog, if that's the right word for it. I think that I was going to say more. I think I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Don't be boring, because this sort of feeds into it of what we had just said, and I see if this connects to all of you. Maybe I'm being opportunistic. Yeah, there you go. So I talked at the PMI Global Conference last year. I was honored to be able to be a speaker at it. And I took this picture. My daughter likes dinosaurs, and so I happened to see at the LA Convention Center where the conference was, on one of the walls, they had these really cool etchings that were there. And so I did this, and then I decided to post it to LinkedIn, and this was part of my speaking profile. So you can like it, you can hate it, but you probably have some sort of feeling about it, and I'm okay with that. I think, though, it's important, especially like with generative AI and a lot of the AI generated slop everywhere. The antidote from my perspective, especially for public speaking, if I've got all of you were kind enough to join this conversation, right? Around 20 people, 15. You're investing an hour of your time. Why would I do something that you could just go find online and read if you wanted to do that, that was generic and commoditized and didn't really give you a perspective? It wouldn't be really super useful. If you want that, it's available. You can get it more easily than from me. But what I'm going to give you is my take and my perspective on it, and things that I think work. So be yourself in perspective, tone, and approach. My approach and tone is mine, and yours is yours. I think that just sort of Justin and Pat, like what we were talking about, right? I'm the vehicle for this, and so how I present something is going to be unique to me. But it's to Greg. I think I like the way that you characterize that in the chat. But I am the vehicle for this and the perspective on this. But it's really about the content itself really being the focus. How that content is delivered, though, I try to put my own stamp on it, good, bad, or otherwise. I tried doing this initially, and basically when you try to satisfy everybody, this is true with all product management, by the way. If you try to satisfy everyone, you will satisfy no one. Who is your audience? So my audience today is very specifically new or about to get started public speakers who have a background in project leadership. That's my audience. So I'm not trying to do a presentation based on people who are public speakers professionally and have been for decades. This isn't for them. This is for all of you. I'm not trying to satisfy everybody, but my focus is very specifically on what I think might be helpful and interesting to all of you. Again, if I was giving this presentation to those in perhaps the agile sphere, where I spend a lot of my time, rather than varieties of project and program management, or in other contexts, I probably would tune some of this. Also, if I was doing it towards technical experts, or if I was doing it for nonprofits, same idea. Who's my audience? What would I do? Still keeping my perspective and tone and approach. How would I orient the content to be focused on language they'd understand, concepts they'd understand? You have to be thoughtful about that and who your audience is, with some level of specificity when you're building and delivering content. Not sure if everyone finds me funny. I think Greg and I talked before everyone else joined that we always have dad jokes because we're dads. Even if you're not a dad, you're welcome to use as many dad jokes as you'd like, or any jokes. Some folks use stories. I use them occasionally, but I try to do humor. You may or may not think it's funny, but hopefully you appreciate the intent and the attempt. But we want to connect. Again, if you can find it just by searching on Google or ChatGPT, then just do that. But if we're actually having a conversation, let's make it fun. Let's try to make this time valuable and enjoyable. I don't know how many of you, let me see if anyone's actually doing these body language moves right now. I'm gonna definitely show up, Fred. Let me see. Fred, I think, yeah, Fred and David are being my good my good plants in the audience. So if you're not a student of body language, yeah, I should have put this one right next to the Death by PowerPoint. You guys are we didn't practice this, but this is what your board members are like. This is awesome. But body language really matters. And if you're doing these remote, by the way, and thank you for those of you who came on video, it's a good way for me to see how which of my dad jokes are bombing, by the way. But joking aside, body language, I think the data that I've seen pretty consistent is somewhere between like 60 to 80% of all language with humans, human to human language, is through body language. And a lot of it is screaming very loudly in these sessions. So it can be overwhelming, by the way, sometimes, because you may have one or two people in the audience who are completely checked out. I like to look in the aggregate. So I'm looking at the group that's actually on camera right now, trying to read those things. David Fine went back on video. So I'm sort of assessing it, but eye contact helps. Now I've got you all on one screen over here in the presentation on this one. So I'm going back and forth. So I'm looking over here. I'm actually making eye contact with you, but eye contact helps with engagement. But read the room or read the Zoom, right? And you can see some of the traditional body language things here. These are extreme, right? But if you see a lot of people going like this, which happens to me a lot, that is a sign that what I've just said is not yet clear. And I'm going to stop. Yeah. Oh, over the head, or it might have even gone sideways. I don't, all I know is like, it's not yet connecting. So read the room, read the Zoom. Like that one's pretty easy, right? You know, rolling of eyes, but a lot of them are less subtle, but they're still really easy to read. Yeah, Fred, we've both seen that one a couple times. But are people zoning out? I mean, I used to not want to look at the audience in some cases because I'm like, I'm clearly boring people. And so if I see that you all are doing that, whoever's on camera, I know that I've got to sort of change my game a little bit. By the way, this is not just for public speaking. If you spend a lot of time in Zooms like I do, get people on camera, you'll know if stuff's connecting or not. But especially for these public talks, especially starting with remote ones, which I recommend and I'll talk about later, read the room. And if you see this, even though it's uncomfortable, I highly suggest pausing, go back to that engagement slide, ask some questions. If you can see that people are doing the quizzical, if you can see with my glasses, like this, that's a sign to stop and ask for questions. And you may not be comfortable, but I actually say, folks, I can tell by the body language, like that's not making sense. Can I explain it differently? Or you probably have a question. Or if you see people with cynical looks on their face, like, yeah, right, we can move for agile ways of working from waterfall. I get that a lot these days, and the last 20 years of these days. So I can see the skepticism, and I'm comfortable. You may not be initially to say, hey, you know, David Fine, I can tell, like, you're a little bit skeptical. Let's talk about that. Like, tell me, did you have an experience with agile ways of working that didn't work out really well? I'm only doing that because I wanted you to be able to see me rolling my eyes. But those sorts of things, like you can key in on it. You may not want to start there, but as you continue your speaking, this will be something that you want to think about. But get comfortable with the idea of taking that body language and redirecting it. They're telling you something. That's body language. They're saying something. Listen to the body language and then adapt. You'll get comfortable with it pretty quickly.
Or someone just shaking their head.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree.
Yeah, and that's great. And that's a really good point. And also, like, to be able to say it's okay to disagree. Like, part of the benefit of this, and it's terrifying at first, by the way, when you go into a meeting going, and I probably should advance to the next slide. Let's see. Yeah, thank you. That kind of teed this up. So preparing for the unknown, there is this fear of somebody's going to play. If everyone ever listened to Car Talk back in the day, Stump the Chumps, they used to have, thank you, a few of you get that, right? So I used to, when I first started doing this, I'm like, I have imposter syndrome, right? I'm an introvert. It doesn't sound like one. I'm whatever. I'm recovering. I'm an introvert though. And I was terrified of like, well, I think I know this stuff well, but somebody's going to come into this room and they're going to give this question because I know there's going to be that guy. And sorry, I know I'm being recorded, but it's always a guy. It's always a guy. But some guy will be like, I've got this really obscure thing and you won't be able to answer it, and I'm going to embarrass you in front of people. That doesn't bother me at all. If people want to play stump the chumps, that's an ego thing for them, usually, not for me. They want a spotlight. You can manage that, but don't let it get in the way of getting started with talking. You may encounter that sooner or later. You probably will, but it's really not a big deal. First of all, is if you're not sure about how to handle the unknown in general, like, well, what if I don't understand this? Or what if there is a question? I never know what questions I'm going to get when I do, especially new content, but I know there'll be questions. I'm okay with that. I will repeat or paraphrase them in my own language if I don't understand them. I will also, by the way, say, I'm sorry, I really don't understand your question. Like, if you don't understand it, don't pretend that you do. You'll answer the wrong question. Even if you answer the wrong question right, it's still the wrong question. So repeat or paraphrase those questions if you need to make sure that it's clear. I learned this when I first started doing tech support, before half of you were born, way back in the day. I never said that I knew everything. If they asked a question, I didn't have the answer. I didn't guess. I didn't speculate, but I'd say, I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. Sometimes I lie and I say it's a great question, even if I don't think it is one. It's up to you if you want to do that or not. Is it plugged in? Did you reboot? Exactly. But if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know. And then if you want to follow up, if it's something that the rest of the audience is interested in, then offer to follow up, offer to take it offline. Don't spend the rest of your conference or your conversation, though, going in that rabbit hole. And I'm guilty of somebody who likes to explore rabbit holes and creates them sometimes when they don't exist. So you don't want to do that. You want to stay on topic. And again, you've got however many other individuals in your session other than that individual, they probably want you to get back to the points that you had. So don't spend too much time on those things, but redirect them and handle them with grace. If you get that one difficult question, don't let it derail your confidence. All of you know a lot about at least a few things. None of you know everything about everything. And you shouldn't. Even you, David. Sorry, buddy. That being the case, don't let it derail your confidence. If you want to explore it after the session, do it. Otherwise, move on. And if you do get somebody who's confrontational, this has not happened to me for quite some time. But I used to have some folks, again, that would play stump the chumps and really just want to get stuck on that publicly and then sort of disparage whatever it is, agile ways of working. Like, they'll never work. They never worked anywhere. It's it's snake oil, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to engage in that conversation. Happy to take that offline and then just move on, move back to the people who want to actually participate. Yeah, exactly. Let's take that offline and then do it if you want to. But that's really it as far as preparing for the unknown. And then close with strength. So again, for me, the end of the conversation is actually the beginning of the conversation, or the end of the talk is the beginning of the conversation. We're getting close to our time here. It is 12:52 Pacific, 3:52 as my clock say, even though I'm in Nevada, because I work with my friends in DC. But I don't want this to be the end of this conversation. I want it to be the beginning. Invite questions, feedback, discussion. Let's keep this going, right? Maybe there's the next round of this is one of you doing part 2. But close with strength. We want to actually have a solid ending. We want to have some simple, actionable steps, right? So if any of you are inspired by this, and I hope at least one of you are, this is the nudge off the fence, some next steps to get started. Where appropriate, if you want to, I don't have that in this one, but I do it in a lot of my trainings, provide additional links or resources, like if you want to do additional training or further learning. And I always welcome folks to join my LinkedIn network. I try very actively to not look like or act like or be someone who's trying to sell products or services to anybody. LinkedIn for me is giving back to the community. And I think that that's really important. So share your LinkedIn profile stuff with folks, and you can continue those conversations as you wish. You'll learn, again, even if you're the speaker, like we talked about, you're going to learn. So I just said that you should probably have some suggested next steps to close strong. So I realized that I should probably have some next steps to close strong. So if this has nudged you, I would suggest first get started with some topics that you're passionate about, things that you care about. that you have an opinion on, and you think others might at least be interested in hearing your opinion, right? You're not trying to convert people, but if you've got a perspective, I promise you, people want to learn what that is. Even if they don't necessarily agree with you at the end of it, it's still a different way to sort of expand their horizon, especially with PM work. What's unique about you? So I know about half of you who are on this call. I know, especially for the board members here with PMI Northern Nevada, I know all of your own strengths, at least some of them. I've seen them in action. I've seen your personalities in action. All of you are wonderful speakers, and I'm sure that's true for all of you that I haven't seen speak as of yet. All of you have your own unique voice and your own unique background. I personally and professionally would love to hear each of you talk about something you care about, and I promise you I would learn from that. So, but think about what's unique to you. What do you want to share with people? What's important to you that you think could be important to others? If you are wanting to get started on this journey, look for opportunities to speak. I suggest starting with things that are safe to you until you get sort of comfortable. Shameless self-plug for our chapter. If you're interested, you can start here. We would love to have you talk with our chapter at one of these events, and I'll volunteer some of my fellow board members, because they're all on mute, will help you if you would like that help. Even if they weren't on mute, they would do that anyway. But we'd love to help you get started and start you on your journey. I had some folks who were very helpful for me at the beginning when I was nervous as heck. We'd like to do the same for you. Consider in person and remote, but you may want to start with remote. It's less to worry about for a lot of folks logistically, and also I find that a lot of people are less anxious if you can do it behind a camera than actually being up on a stage. The PMI conference, I think I had 500 people, or at least a few hundred people in the audience. That can get intimidating even if you've done it a lot before, when you're standing on an actual stage. Like, I'm not Taylor Swift, just in case there's any question there. Yeah, exactly. So, but we want to start small and probably start remote. But apply to speak to conferences. I don't know. The 300, yeah, definitely. It was not a Taylor Swift sized crowd, I'll tell you that. And they were not as happy at the end either. But it was good. But there's lots of conferences out there. So if you need some help finding one to speak at, let us know. And then again, don't wait until you're ready. I mentioned this at the beginning. I'll mention it at closing. I've been doing this for like 25 years. I'm not ready yet, but I feel like I might be at some point. So if I'm not ready yet, and I do it professionally, all of you, you're ready, even if you're not ready. So I would strongly encourage you to get started. And you got some folks here who are happy to help you if you want to start on that journey. So that's it. We only have a couple of minutes, but we did some Q&A. I'm going to go ahead and stop there. Oh, hold on really quickly. I promised. This was the first slide. For those of you that joined late, I read this verbatim without making eye contact in the most awful, droning on, monolithic, sort of monotone, comprehending your apprehensions, acknowledge your fears by introspectively. So you missed that. So you probably are happy that you were late. But that was how we started exactly. All right. We got a couple of minutes. Any last thoughts?
Do we get a bonus for sitting through the whole thing?
Yeah, as long as you're paying,
Ow.
Absolutely.
Bold.
I know.
I think you did a great job, John.
Thanks, Pat.
Your preparation definitely showed.
Thank you. That Dolly Parton quote always is my favorite, and it applies there. So thank you all so much. Hey, how are you?
Hey, John, nice to see you. I just want to say thank you for your openness. I can't believe that you get nervous when doing this, or that also you spend tons of hours doing this, because for me, I have seen you in action like last year, most of the year. And it's like you were always prepared. You don't need to prepare everything.
Thank you so much for the kind words. I am. It is. It's truly an honor. So I won't say who the client is, but we have worked together, and I will say, it is because of you and some of our fellow teammates. That's what inspires me, and I love the opportunity to share these things, and it's an honor, like it truly is. So, and a privilege. Thank you so much. And yes, I'm nervous every time, including in all those IT talks, every single time.
If you're not nervous a little bit, it's bad.
Yeah, if you don't, because to me, like stage fright is, you all are investing your time. That means a lot. Like if I screw this up, you've wasted your time.
And we're going to be upset.
Well, and even if you're not, like it's gonna taint your perspective on that topic. Like it's really important for me to do the right thing because you've entrusted me with your time and your brain and your heart. So yeah, I agree with Fred. Like if you're not at least a little bit nervous about it, then I think there's a high risk that you're not thinking about the magnitude of the investment of folks. Exactly. Yeah. So thank you all. I can't thank you enough for joining. Thank you for the conversation. I hope this was helpful. Thanks, everybody. Have a great remainder of the week. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, John.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, John. Thanks, John.